I think now we can start getting into it.
Sure.
I have another topic actually that was on the coaching side of things, and again, to kind of like bring the history in a little bit, just because it feels like a lot of people are just like, oh, Valve hate coaches now, as if that's coming out of nowhere, right?
Oh, it's always the case. Yeah.
Coaches gave him a pretty good reason recently, but it's always been the case. And actually, I went back.
Oh, they never give Valve credit that. I'll even say this myself. I hated all those coach changes in 2016. Like, if you don't know, I was a massive fan of the Star X and all that. And obviously, I wanted to have these teams like Liquid at the time, if you remember, just switched. So they were having like Peacemaker be the IGL instead of the other. So I will say, I thought it was a massive negative.
Navi at the time.
But here's the problem, Semmler. Tell you what, Valve, that's aged like a motherfucker for Valve, hasn't it? It looks great now. Like, now you sort of see why they didn't want people fucking around doing it. Like, because essentially they didn't want to have to police all this extra stuff. If it's just 5 people in the server, VAC takes care of it, doesn't it? Or whatever anti-cheat you use. As you see, I'll even give it up to Valve. There was a lot more potential danger than I was aware. I'm a pretty cynical person, people would say. I wouldn't have thought this many people were cheating.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Let me go ahead and give you context real quick on what this was about. So it's Cyclone, who's the now Mao's coach.
Yes.
For
formerly
Sports,
the Academy
right?
one, and then he came to the main team. Yes.
Exactly. And so this was in relation to IEM Rio 2022 RMR qualifiers. Is coaching allowed? No, coaching is not allowed. Coaching on the server is not allowed. It is forbidden for coaches and other staff to be seen, heard, felt, or present during official online tournament matches. Coaches must not be present in the tournament area, i.e. the room where the match is played, or any form of online voice communication tool, TeamSpeak, whatever server, during official online tournament matches. And now, there's obvious pushback coming back on this, where it's just like, oh, fucking Valve, oh my gosh, like why is this? No timeouts, no nothing. Dude, I'm on the other side. I'm on Valve side. I'm like you. I'm on Valve side right now, where it's like you have all these pros and everybody coming out, like, oh, how is this going to be enforced, and what, why do Valve have it against coaches? It's just like, no, Valve made it very clear, and I've even gone back and found that 2016 article where Valve expound on the coach decision, where they reined in the coach role. They said, we do not want coaches as a sixth man. And back then, the reasoning was also that they wanted what people saw on the screen on their stream, right, of the teams competing to be as similar as possible to what they experienced in matchmaking, because they wanted it to treat esports like marketing, basically. And so when you watch the pros, you needed to be able to see yourself doing the same thing. And if you have a sixth guy standing behind you who happens to be the IGL, that doesn't align with what you're experiencing in the game. And so that was one part of why Valve also did not want to have this sixth man coaching. But of course, like you say, they've been vindicated as fuck, because that's the beauty of it as well. Valve, they put their foot down and said that there were no comms, right? But that you could still have a coach. So they were willing to compromise. Valve they actually compromised and said, okay, we'll let you guys have the coaches. The coaches can help train the team, and they can get involved in timeouts. We'll give tactical timeouts so the coaches can get involved there. And then during, between the halves and post-match, all that, right? We'll let the coaches be involved. We just don't want that sixth man to be the IGL. We want the IGL to be a player who's on the server. So Valve compromised. They could have put their foot down right there and said, no coaches at all, because TI, you're not allowed to have coaches in the box at all. There's no coaches involved with the players. It's just the 5 players in the server. So that also shows how there's different bodies and there's different groups in Valve in terms of like the games and who's making decisions and who has the vision for the game. The CSGO guys are not necessarily the Dota guys, and they may not see things alike. And so that also shows you how the different
games.
Next
part. There was another part to the story, remember?
Well, go ahead.
Well,
no, go ahead.
They also then in there to show that the trend continues, that they were against coaching, famously because of the coaching bug scandal and other implications. Remember, at Stockholm, they famously said through threat, you're not even allowed to cheer. You have to sit there. You can't because they were worried that you're giving hand signals now, and you do, or maybe you're doing some pointing to, they were just essentially worried that again there's some sort of fuckery going on. So if you remember at the time, that was another uproar, because obviously what's going to happen every time, spoiler guys, is the person who's doing the crime the least in theory, like a super legit coach, is going to be like, but I'm not doing that, so this is totally unfair. But unfortunately, then the community goes, yeah, why is Valve doing this? And then you go, but there are people abusing it though, which by the way is what like the flying DJ from ESL claims. For example, he claims there have been teams that were using hand signals and sort of doing like, fucking sign language or whatever, and that people would know it was like doing a short B rush this time or play contact A or whatever. Like, I could believe that, by the way. The problem obviously 100%. In this case is it enforceable? And if it isn't enforceable, then you just fuck with a good thing, which is exactly a segue to this topic. Because here's the problem with this topic, Semmler. On the surface of it, it's brilliant. You know what it is, Semmler? It's essentially the left-wing approach to gun control. It goes, guns are a problem, so guns are banned, therefore guns shouldn't exist anymore. There are no more guns.
There are no more guns. There's no more problem, yeah.
Yeah, the problem with that is this. I know why Valve would say no more coaches. Essentially, Valve is Stalin here. No coach, no problem. Like, they nailed it. The problem they have is this. The coach doesn't stop existing because you said that, just like the gun. So the real issue becomes, what do we do with all the illegal guns, Semmler? So the same question is now going to be asked, which is, okay, I get it, guys. If your team Vitality, who famously, if you remember, were on stream and they were the ones that had all the people in the room with them and got in trouble with Blast for stream watching or whatever. If you're Vitality and you do a big setup and maybe you stream your games or you have like video cameras and they can, they can maybe police you, your massive team, which is probably who this rule was designed for. The problem, and the obvious problem, is this, Semmler. If you're the nobody team of 5 players who's not a pro team and you're just in someone's bedroom in Sweden with no cameras, and essentially you put TeamSpeak on a push key only and you take your fingers off the key and that guy talks to you between the rounds, you're just going to get not only an advantage, you're going to have a coach and Vitality isn't, but you'll never be able to be punished for it. And yes, look, let's be real, that team's not going to qualify to the major, but that's not the point. And this is what people always miss in Counter-Strike. The problem is this, Semmler. They could knock out the team that could make the major. They could get to a game and just play some really bullshit game where their coach is both stream watching and fucking talking to them, and then Vitality's just playing, and then Vitality loses like a 16-14 game, and suddenly Vitality can't go to a major. Like, that's
exactly what happened, right, with Na'Vi and the coach bug, where they were getting upset by these CIS teams.
The Akuma
they were
one,
all cheating their tits off, and Na'Vi were just like, wait, what? How are you like 10 times better all of a sudden? That was one of the
problem. The issue here is, like, it's going to be really hard to enforce this. Like, I get why they're doing it. Still, their logic is essentially, by the way, spoiler, whenever something's unenforceable, what it really means is this. It's about, I always say, it's just like when the parent is really sick of your shit and they're just like, look, anything happens again, I'm just going to go mental, basically. It's like that, basically. What you're saying there is like, look, I'm not really going to enforce it, but if you do this thing, I'm going to give you the heaviest punishment. I'm just sort of deterring you. I'm just telling you, like, I will fuck you up if you do this. Like, that's all Valve's saying. They're not really saying, like, we've got a way to stop you doing it, or some like an advanced system that can detect. What we're saying is, if you get caught, just like we did with Steel and iBuyPower, just like we did with all these coaches that have been banned, and fucking Gary from Furia, and fucking Raging from Mousepot. Spoiler, if we catch you, we will absolutely fucking lay this hammer on you. We will give you the work and we will make sure you are a pariah in this industry. So that's what they're setting up here. Now, obviously, the problem with it is it just takes out a major component of modern day Counter-Strike. Like, spoiler, I'll say it right now, there wouldn't be Gambit in the way that you know them now in Cloud9 without Groove and without Finn and those guys who put the team together and coach them. I've always said this. To me, the reason why I wasn't so shocked when Gambit became like half as good at IM Cologne last year was because that was where the coach couldn't talk the whole time. In a lot of those online competitions, if people don't know, coaches were allowed to talk all the time. So the premise was, if Groove was some master, he was in the server with them, just looking at the game, going sort of like, maybe like slow down, rotation here. You could just be calling shit. So I always used to think when you watch them play, like, their rotations are too good for inexperienced players, mate. Come on. That's like a head in the room who knows the game, who's sort of like giving you a hint, like pull back, like, push together as a unit. Like, that just looks like you got another IGL doing it, because obviously Nafani's not some like legendary LAN IGL, was he? So I was like, I don't believe this. So I can get why they've done this rule. The problem with it is basically is this, Semmler. If there hadn't have been the coaching scandal, I would do what I always did on this show. I would make an impassioned case for what's great about coaching and what you could accomplish. And essentially, like, maybe we can offset some of the negatives. The problem is, I have to say, as someone just being pragmatic and cynical, with how much cheating there's been, and the fact that even more came out recently, and maybe there's going to be even more, I sort of do get it. If you're Valve, it's just like, I'm just sick of this. I just want to run a
I think that's exactly the point. I think Valve, they made the compromise back in 2016 and then further compromises. But I think that's exactly the point. Is like Valve were like, hey, we were willing to make a compromise with you guys. We gave you a bit of freedom and you went and shat all over us. You shat all over our generosity. We were willing to make it so that, hey, coaches, that could be a paid job and you can actually have quite a bit of power and influence and money and you can really do your thing. We were willing to let that happen. Willing to let that fly. And we gave you the trust and you fucking shat all over it. So you know what? We're done with it. You guys have done immeasurable damage. It's going to take years to recover in sense, because now there's always going to be the coach bug scandal. There's always going to be this sort of stuff in our history. It made waves worldwide in terms of the esports scene across all sorts of different games. People were talking about it. It's like Valve is just like, listen, you screwed us. That's it. Bye. You're done. As far as we're concerned in our major events and anything Valve, you're done. We don't care about you anymore. We gave you a chance and you squandered it. And so I totally get where Valve are coming from on this, because if the coaches really, get that trust from Valve and cherish it and take advantage and take care of it, right, and really, just do their jobs and don't fuck around and find out, Well, I don't. This kind of restriction never happens. We may very well still have coaches just having the same level of influence as they had in the past in 2016, where they're able to communicate during breaks, and they're still serving that similar coach role that we see in other lands today. But they fucked around and they found out. There you go. Valve are like, no, not happening anymore. So it is going to destabilize major teams. And this actually kind of comes back on an old point that I used to make, in the sense that all tournaments should, if the major, let's say that the whole tournament circuit should actually kind of model itself on what is like the peak competition.
Yes,
exactly. Like, what is the peak competition that you value the most? Is that the major? Is that Cologne? Whatever. Then you should be trying to make it so that you are playing under those similar conditions at all times, right? And so,
wait, just to explain, if a fan doesn't know what you mean there, the premise goes like this. It wouldn't make sense for people, for example, at tier 2 to have coaches now get good at the game, qualify to tier 1, but then we talk, right, the coach scores now. Like, in that scenario, it should be uniform at all levels. It should just be like, this is the game that you play. Everyone's playing.
You're looking to train in the same, you're trying to reproduce the same conditions that you would face in the tournament. And you're also looking to have the similar conditions as in the most important tournament. So if the most important tournament is the major for you, then in theory, you should be trying to always play that way, so that you are at your peak in the major. You don't have any crutches. You don't have anything that's helping you out in the meantime, right? And so now it almost makes me wonder, if teams should be modeling their play on the majors. If your goal going into Rio, it's like a fight camp or something. Like, you're going to build up to that moment and be at your peak for that one tournament. So if the goal is to kick ass and take names at Rio, then it's almost like, coming out of this player break, you need to start phasing out the coaches. The coaches can talk to you pre and post match, sort of, but during the match, the coach isn't even in the room anymore. You need to start thinking in that way if you're a tier 1 team, because come major day, that's it. Your coach, he's not even going to be there. So you need to be able to perform the 5 players on the server, and that's it. So I actually expect tier 1 teams. I think that tier 1 teams are going to have to start going in that direction. And you have some teams, I think that is the case, where it's like, FaZe Roban, I don't think that he has as much. I think Inner Shine has more say tactically than Roban does, for example. I think Roban is there to like facilitate the players and help on that front, but I don't think he's that much of a tactical side of things. Whereas Blade's impact on the team, I mean,
dude, this is the first thing I thought. When I saw this, I thought, one, FaZe is already number 1 in the world, but this is just giving them an extra advantage.
This is just going to help them go better.
Won a major without a coach. And then secondly, the second thing I thought was their main rival is the coach. The joke is, even when the team was simple, it now looks like Blade's actually the most important member of the fucking team. Like, he's allowed them without an IGL to just win more champions. Like, the joke is like, this could actually be this could shift the power dynamic. Yeah,
completely. We could have a completely different result in Rio. It really is weird. Like, it's actually, we're in a kind of weird state if you think about it, because now we're going to have like parallel tournament circuits where you're going to have results that are in the major and played under a certain set of circumstances, and then you're going to go throughout the rest of the circuit and have a totally different potential for results, because you have a coach and analyst and everything, and they can all be chiming in at all times. And so we're going to be in this weird state right now, I think, in CS, where either we need to go all the way back to LAN, and now that it really is scaling back on Rona. And at least if you're in North America, things are looking like they're going to go pretty much back to normal. You have some places in Europe pretty much back to normal. You have some places in like Germany that are completely out of their minds. But, you can avoid those places, right, and have your tournaments elsewhere. But like, if we can go back to just having LANs again, go pre-Rona and just have LANs again, then we're going to have to start seeing our tournament organizers going to start modeling themselves more on the major LAN format and the major LAN rules. Or are you still going to have these parallel tracks where the majors are going to have their rule set and then everybody else is going to have theirs? And we're going to have weird results because of it, because some teams are going to perform better under one rule set versus another.
Sure. I will just say, the one thing I will say at the end is, like, look, I do totally understand why Valve's doing it. Like I say, quite frankly, policing the CSGO scene is a thankless task, and it just seems like a waste of fucking time. I mean, even if you do it, it doesn't seem like you catch all the cheaters anyway. But the reason I think it's sad that they're going to do this is because even what was essentially, if you remember, when they made the compromise that you're talking about, where you could have a couple of timeouts in each half, and that's when the coach could talk. At the time, we even tried to offer Valve an improved compromise. The improved compromise was obviously talking freeze time only, right? The reason I always thought that was the fairest and the best approach is because it mimics American football. If you don't know, in American football, there's a certain time within the play clock that the coach can communicate on the headset with the quarterback. But once that time hits, it cuts off, and then the quarterback just has to call the play. So it allows you to coach to say, like, look, this is what I'm seeing, and here's what you're going to run. But then he also can like switch it up. So like, that would be great for Counter-Strike. If I even said the way I got into American football is Monty once said to me, it should be your sport, mate. It just is Counter-Strike. It's like you just run tactics, then you're running them over and over again. And it's like the offense sets up versus what the defense doing.
Sure, yeah.
So I remember him saying, well, the joke is he's right, but they're actually taking out the essence of what could have actually made it even more like American football and really taking it to the next level. Because the reason it's sad, to reference what we talked about on the last episode, if you remember, is I want to see a world in the future where the whole people behind the teams are the masterminds. It is Gobby versus Zonic versus Glaive versus Blade versus MSL one day versus fucking Sean Gares. You know what I mean? Wouldn't that be the best ever if essentially there's the CSGO teams, but then above them there's like some anime Yu-Gi-Oh level shit of like, you've activated my trap card now, Blade. Like, you know what I mean? That would be the shit, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing. Imagine the banter back. Like imagine basically MSL Coacher versus Glaive, Coacher versus Zonic, like just throw guys alone again, and then Carrigan's a go. You know what I mean? Like the banter would be incredible. The storylines could keep going. You can have all the same rivalry. It could be amazing. But the problem is, if they can't bloody talk, immediately a lot of that sexy storyline just goes away, doesn't it?
It's just going to be a shorter shelf life. Like you are going to have the career of your player, however long you can play for, and you'll never have like the Hunden storyline again. Basically, like this completely just removes the Hunden storyline of being able to stick around and fight and develop talent and have that kind of talent and all that. Like you're not going to be able to build that storyline in the same way. It really is just going to kneecap the whole coaching and that whole coaching aspect of the game is gone. But at this point, you know, I'm kind of just like, well, you squandered it. Like, I guess we deserve what we're getting right now because we had the chance and we completely squandered the opportunity to look that far. It's all about, you know, short-term returns, like, oh, we need to qualify for this tournament or whatever, not thinking what the long-term impact of your actions is going to be. And in this case, it just means you've just kneecapped the scene in terms of growth, unless Valve decide to change their mind and take another chance on us. I don't see at this point why they would. They've given us plenty.
Yeah,
they've given us plenty of chances.
Long before the coaching ban, Valve gave no indication ever that they were going to reverse things like that, or that they were even interested. Quite frankly, like the iBuyPower unbans, it always seemed like they're not even interested in discussing it. Like they've made that decision and they're just going to live with it. Like essentially, to them, what you're saying earlier, which is the idea that like there are not 6 players in a Counter-Strike team, that is essentially like a fundamental principle of theirs. That's like their equivalent of Animal Farm. Like, you know, animals have like, you know, like that's like their first rule on the fucking fence, isn't it?
Good.
The analogy even works because in this case, certain teams do have more.
Yeah, exactly. Certain teams do have a little bit more than others, depending on where they come from.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows if that gets enforced? Should we move on?
Conflict of interest. Yeah, we should move on.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.